two ways I'm thinking about this, and you touched on this, is that like there's like formal, seems like there's formal ritual, and there's also sort of living as, I don't know if you could say in the ritual spirit or, but living mindfully, slowly, with intent, with wisdom, and yeah, without, yeah, where it seems like there is a way of looking at them as regular life and ritual as separate and different, and also as on a continuum.
Hmm.
And one thing I've been wondering is that you're touching on like specific objects, sort of, if that's the right word, of ritual of like ancestors, which I think that's particularly appropriate for Westerners. I mean, I remember hearing on a podcast that like most people don't know past three generations their family. And that seems almost disturbing to me. That's like those people produced you and you literally have no idea about them at all. It's kind of weird. It's like we're just floating on the surface and just kind of looking around, and that's what reality is to us. But but yeah, and also you've mentioned like ash, water, even with the morning tea, it's like that's water and there's some herb there and things. And yeah, and also mentioning like with the caffeine, there's a little bit of an altered state of consciousness, and but like sort of a soft way, not, you know, as much like hard drugs or like the like psychedelic experience or something like that. Um, but yeah, I don't know if there's anything about that, the dichotomy or the continuation between formal ritual and everyday life that you wanted to talk about, or about the specific objects, if that's the right word, of ritual.
Hmm. Well, I think the continuum versus the dichotomy that you brought up is really interesting because and I can touch on the other thing too, but that really kind of caught my mind because it's I can see both being true, right? Like if you go into I'll just speak of my own experience. You go into an intense fire ritual to transform something in your life, and you have a whole community of people doing it, and you build a huge bonfire, and you set up all the things you're supposed to set up. And there's, you know, at least in the tradition I was in, there's drumming, and there's, you know, there's this energy fills the space, and you go one by one, and you speak to the ancestors, and you make your prayer, and you make your offering, and you do the circuits and you come back to the center where the people are all gathered and you're welcomed back. Like that's a huge ritual. That is not a cup of tea. That is, you know, that is not you know, I do the sign of the cross when I walk through the door to feel safe when I'm going out in the world, or, you know, whatever. But but it's just a bigger version. So they're distinctly different. And a proper ritual can kind of look like anything, but involves a lot of planning, a lot of intent, a lot of creativity, a lot of unknown. It's a whole event. It can take a day or two or three, depending on how big it can get very big. Um, and you know, you've got like even mass is like, you know, what is like an hour and a half or something. It's obviously it's been a while. Um, but they're not opposites. You know,
Hmm.
it is a continuum, but it can be if I mean on any gradient, if you take one side and you look at the other side, it looks like a polar relationship, you know, and it is, but that's not to say that one isn't the same as the other, you know. If you're this, you know, fundamentally, if you're hot or you're cold, it's still temperature.
Hmm.
You know, hot and cold aren't at war. You're not trying to pick hot or cold,
Hmm.
you know. You're if you're trying to go into ritual, when I say start small, I mean, you know, the one end of the spectrum, the smaller. So my sides are, I'm thinking left to right, but it's got me mirrored here.
Oh.
Um, um, but starting somewhere small and kind of finding your right place to it um, is much more important than trying to create some massive thing, I think. Um, but yeah, that's not to say that there's a distinct difference. No, no more so than like a kid selling lemonade on the street to passersby is any less of a business than, Amazon. Like they're
Mm,
both businesses.
mm,
You can call them both by that term.
mm,
There's not a dichotomy there, but there is a dichotomy. And
mm.
I don't think there's I think that does. So then the other point was around the actual items. Can you
Hmm.
can you refresh that for me?
Yeah. So, like, is there, so I mean, and it seems like this also helps to delineate a distinction between formal ritual and everyday life, maybe, although maybe you can structure your life so that it is more like formal ritual. But yeah, is there value to like for the West or for specific individuals or whatnot for yeah, specific yeah, items or attention in ritual, like with water or fire, ash, or like ancestors and things like that.
Yeah, hmm. That's more complicated because for items to be imbued with symbolic power requires some sort of tradition or lineage. For
Mm,
the same reason that, like, if you sneak into the back of the church late at night and guzzle a bunch of communion wine, you're not immediately lifted into connection with Jesus Christ. Like
yeah,
you eat some, it's not gonna work that way.
yeah.
Um, but that being said, there is also, again, we've got another sort of a gradient going here of
Mm,
like, yes, it's not that, but that's not to say that you cannot imbue things with the meaning of their own yourself. That you can't sort of create an agreement with yourself of like, okay, this means, when I light this stick of incense in this space, if I have cultivated this certain attitude, it means I am grounded and opening to a connection with my ancestors.
mm,
Um, you could say every time I go to this special stone I've set aside and I take this other stone and I knock on it in a certain way, that's me with a certain attitude. That's me connecting with my ancestors. Sure.
mm,
You could say, my ancestors, it feels to me like they want me to pour water on the ground. Should I do that? Or I don't, maybe I should put a bowl down. Like you have to kind of negotiate all of that with yourself anyway.
mm,
And the traditions and the lineages are are the results of people doing that for a very long time before you. So they carry a lot of good, a lot of mistakes have been made and accounted for, and they are safer in that regard, and they are faster and more reliable because we on our own as individuals, if we're even individuals, but as individuals like we think we are in the West, we're pretty dumb. We don't understand these things. And so there's going to be a lot of trial and error. And you have to sort of find the general, you would have to find some sort of a balance between that of like, ultimately it comes down to what calls you the most. If someone feels called to go back to the church and attend mass on a regular basis, and the structure of that ritual speaks to them, and they leave feeling more connected to something divine and ready to um, be charitable to the poor, and all the fruits of the spirit that they talk about in the Bible that are the result of a healthy relationship with the sacred. These fruits develop in your system, and you're able to go manifest them in the world. Like, great, then do that, And if you need to engage with stone statues and spit alcohol at them and offer all kinds of things to them, and um that speaks to your soul, then do that. But if you do that and it doesn't speak to your soul, like, don't do that. And it's really, I think, ultimately about learning. It's like learning a language you already speak. Like, some part of you already speaks it, and the chances are that part's very young and needs education, and you need to learn what it has to tell you. And that's sort of how it's almost backwards. Like, that's how that part gets educated, is it tells you things, and then you process it, and you try things out. And then you sort of have this back and forth with it. But until you start taking that relationship seriously, you can try a bunch of stuff and it won't really, take root. Um, so